Dr. Sarah Chun had been a prisoner of the Zephyrian Empire for 3 years, though she had long since stopped counting the days. The sterile white walls of her cell aboard the massive medical station orbiting Kepler 442b had become as familiar as her own reflection. What she hadn't expected was to become the most sought-after healer in a galaxy that considered her species nothing more than primitive barbarians. The irony wasn't lost on her. Back on Earth, she had been just another trauma surgeon at Massachusetts General Hospital, working 18-hour shifts and drinking too much coffee. Now, in the depths of space, aliens traveled from across the Empire to seek her help for ailments their advanced technology couldn't cure. The morning routine never changed. The soft hum of the energy barrier would dissipate at precisely 0800 ship time, and Overseer Krell would enter with his usual mixture of disdain and begrudging respect. The tall, insectoid alien's forearms would gesture impatiently as his translator device converted his clicking speech into words Sarah could understand. "The High Admiral requires your services again, human," Krell announced, his compound eyes reflecting the harsh artificial lighting. "Another of our warriors has fallen to the flesh-eating parasites from the Andorian campaign." Sarah rolled her shoulders, working out the kinks from sleeping on the hard metal bench that served as her bed. 3 years of this, and her body still protested the accommodations. "Let me guess, your nanite treatments aren't working?" Krell's mandibles clicked in what Sarah had learned was the Zephyrian equivalent of grinding teeth. "Your primitive methods continue to succeed where our science fails. It is troubling." The walk through the medical station's corridors always drew stares. Other alien species would stop their conversations to watch the human prisoner shuffle past, in her standard-issue gray uniform. Some looked curious, others fearful, and a few showed what might have been respect. Sarah had learned to keep her eyes forward, and her expression neutral. The medical bay stretched across an entire level of the station, filled with technology that would have seemed like magic to her colleagues back home. Holographic displays showed three-dimensional anatomical models of dozens of alien species, while automated surgical units performed procedures with precision no human hand could match. Yet here she was, the primitive human, called in when all their advanced medicine failed. Today's patient was a Korvaxi warrior, one of the Empire's elite shock troops. The reptilian humanoid lay unconscious on a bio bed, his scaled hide mottled with angry red patches where the Andorian parasites had begun their work. Sarah had seen this before. The parasites were engineered bioweapons that adapted to any treatment the Zephyrians threw at them. But they had one weakness the aliens couldn't exploit. "Status report," Sarah said, falling into the professional demeanor that had kept her sane through her imprisonment. Medical technician Vox, a pale blue creature with 6 delicate fingers, brought up the patient's readings. "The parasites have spread to 43% of his integumentary system. Our standard nanite protocols have proven ineffective. The organisms seem to adapt to each treatment within minutes." Sarah nodded, studying the holographic display. The parasites were indeed impressive, almost too perfect in their design. They consumed living tissue while simultaneously preventing the host's immune system from responding effectively. Traditional Zephyrian medicine relied heavily on technological solutions, nanites, and energy treatments that the parasites could analyze and counter. "Prep Surgical Suite 7, Sarah instructed. "I'll need the basic surgical tools, not the automated systems. And get me some honey." Vox's large eyes blinked in confusion. "Honey? I am not familiar with this substance. It's a natural product from my homeworld. You should have some in the xenobiology samples. Bees collect nectar from flowers and process it into a concentrated sugar solution with natural antimicrobial properties." Krell stepped forward, his arms crossing in a gesture of frustration. "You propose to treat advanced bioweapons with insect secretions?" Sarah was already moving toward the surgical suite. "The parasites can adapt to artificial treatments because they can analyze and counter technological approaches. But they can't adapt to something that works through basic biological processes they don't recognize. Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones." The surgery took 6 hours. Sarah worked carefully, removing infected tissue while applying honey-based solutions to the wounds. She had discovered this technique by accident during her first year of captivity when treating a Galaxian trader who had suffered similar parasite infections. The honey not only provided natural antimicrobial properties, but also created an environment the parasites couldn't adapt to quickly enough. As she worked, a crowd gathered outside the surgical suite. Word had spread that the human healer was operating again, using her mysterious primitive methods. Sarah could see them through the transparent aluminum walls, dozens of aliens from different species, all watching with fascination and disbelief. The breakthrough came when the parasites began dying off faster than they could reproduce. Sarah's combination of surgical removal and natural treatments was working where technology had failed. She could hear excited clicking and chirping from the observers as the patient's vital signs stabilized. "Remarkable," breathed Dr. Zill, the station's chief medical officer. The elderly Altarian's tentacles writhed with what Sarah had learned indicated deep thought. "In 300 years of practice, I have never seen parasites respond to such basic interventions." Sarah cleaned her hands with the antiseptic solution, feeling the familiar exhaustion that came after a long surgery. Sometimes complex problems need simple solutions. These parasites were designed to counter advanced medical technology. They weren't prepared for old-fashioned medicine. As the Korvaxi warrior was moved to recovery, Sarah noticed something different in the way the medical staff looked at her. Over the past 3 years, she had gone from being seen as a curiosity to being regarded as something approaching an equal. It was a small victory, but, in her situation, she took what she could get. Krell escorted her back to her cell, but his usual hostility seemed muted. "The High Admiral will be pleased," he said as they walked. "This warrior leads our most elite unit. His recovery will save many lives in future campaigns." Sarah paused at the entrance to her cell. "You know, I could do a lot more good if I had proper facilities and assistance. Maybe even train some of your people in these techniques." The overseer's compound eyes fixed on her. "You are a prisoner, human. Do not forget your place." "I'm a healer," Sarah replied firmly. "That's all I've ever been. Prison walls don't change that." As the energy barrier reactivated, Sarah settled onto her hard bench and stared out the small porthole at the stars beyond. 3 years ago, she had been captured during a Zephyrian raid on a human medical colony. She had expected torture, experimentation, or death. Instead, she had found something she never could have imagined, a purpose that transcended species and politics. The comm system crackled to life. "Dr. Chun, this is Medical Bay 7. We have an incoming emergency. Telvanni ambassador suffering from Rigelian blood fever. The High Admiral requests your immediate assistance." Sarah smiled despite herself. Another impossible case, another chance to prove that sometimes the simplest solutions were the most effective. She pressed the comm button. "On my way." As Krell returned to escort her back to the medical bay, Sarah caught a glimpse of respect in his alien features. 3 years of proving herself one patient at a time was slowly changing how they saw her. She was no longer just a human prisoner. She was becoming something more valuable than any weapon in the Empire's arsenal. The corridor stretched ahead, leading back to the medical bay where another life hung in the balance. Sarah squared her shoulders and followed Krell, ready to once again show the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons, but their ability to heal and help others, no matter who they were or where they came from. In the vastness of space, surrounded by aliens who had once been her enemies, Dr. Sarah Chun was discovering that healing was truly the most human thing of all. The Telvanni ambassador was dying, and everyone in Medical Bay 7 knew it. Sarah stood over the crystalline being's prone form, watching as the Rigelian blood fever slowly turned his transparent flesh a sickly orange color. The disease was notorious throughout the galaxy, a viral infection that attacked the nervous systems of silicon-based life forms. In the 3 centuries since first contact with the Telvanni, no cure had ever been found. Ambassador Korvetha's breathing came in ragged gasps, each exhale releasing tiny sparkles of silicon dust into the air. His aide, a younger Telvanni named Shun, stood nearby with tears of liquid crystal streaming down her face. The sight reminded Sarah why she had become a doctor in the first place, back when the biggest problem she faced was saving human lives in a Boston emergency room. "How long does he have?" Sarah asked Dr. Zill, who was monitoring the ambassador's vital signs with instruments that hummed and beeped in alien harmonics. The Altarian's tentacles drooped with disappointment. Perhaps 6 hours, maybe less. The fever has reached his neural crown. Once it spreads to his consciousness matrix, the damage will be irreversible. Sarah studied the readouts, noting how the infection progressed through the Telvanni's unique physiology. Unlike carbon-based life forms, the crystalline beings had no traditional immune system. Instead, they relied on harmonic frequencies generated by their neural crowns to maintain cellular stability. The Rigelian virus disrupted these frequencies, essentially causing the body to lose cohesion at a molecular level. What treatments have been attempted? Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Medical technician Vox consulted his data pad. Standard antiviral compounds, harmonic resonance therapy, nanite intervention, and quantum field stabilization. All proved ineffective. The virus appears to be immune to conventional treatment. Sarah nodded slowly, her mind racing through possibilities. The Rigelian blood fever had stumped the best medical minds in the galaxy for centuries, but they all shared the same limitation. They were thinking like advanced technological civilizations, trying to solve the problem with complex solutions that matched their sophisticated understanding of medicine. I need to examine some of Ambassador Corvetha's crystalline matrix samples under basic optical microscopy, Sarah said. Not your quantum analyzers or molecular scanners. Just simple light microscopy. Dr. Zill's tentacles writhed in confusion. Light microscopy? But such instruments lack the resolution to examine silicon-based cellular structures in meaningful detail. Sometimes you need to see the forest, not the trees, Sarah replied, already moving toward the laboratory section. Humor me. The optical microscope was a relic, kept in the station's historical medical equipment collection more for educational purposes than practical use. Sarah had to adjust the focus manually, something she hadn't done since medical school. As the Telvanni tissue samples came into view under the simple lens, she began to see what the advanced instruments had missed. The Rigelian virus wasn't just disrupting the Telvanni's harmonic frequencies, it was creating interference patterns. The viral structures were arranged in geometric formations that generated counterharmonics, essentially jamming the natural resonance that kept the crystalline beings stable. But there was something else, something the quantum scanners had overlooked because they were designed to look for complex molecular interactions. The virus is using the host's own harmonic frequencies against them, Sarah muttered, adjusting the microscope settings. It's like a parasitic tuning fork, creating destructive interference. Krell had been standing silently in the corner, watching Sarah work with his usual mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Explain this in terms we can understand. Human. Sarah looked up from the microscope. Think of it like noise-canceling technology. The virus analyzes the Telvanni's natural harmonic signature and generates an exact opposite frequency. The two cancel each other out, causing cellular breakdown. But this has been theorized before, Dr. Zill protested. We have attempted harmonic amplification to overcome the interference, but the virus adapts too quickly. Sarah returned to the microscope, studying the viral structures more carefully. Under simple optical magnification, she could see patterns that the complex scanners had filtered out as irrelevant background data. The virus wasn't just adapting, it was learning, using quantum processing to predict and counter any harmonic therapy the Telvanni medical team attempted. What if we don't fight it? Sarah said suddenly. What if we give it exactly what it wants? The medical team exchanged glances. Shun, the ambassador's aide, stepped forward with hope and desperation in her crystalline features. What do you mean, Dr. Shun? Sarah was already moving back to the main medical bay, her mind working through the implications of what she had observed. The virus needs to maintain its counterharmonic frequency to survive. It's expending enormous energy to constantly adapt and generate new interference patterns. What if we overload it? She approached Ambassador Corvetha's biobed and began studying the harmonic generators used in Telvanni medical treatment. The equipment was incredibly sophisticated, capable of generating precise frequencies with quantum accuracy. But Sarah had something in mind that would require much simpler tools. I need a basic acoustic resonance device, she said. Nothing digital or quantum-enabled. Just something that can produce pure sound waves at specific frequencies. Vox looked puzzled, but complied, bringing a primitive acoustic generator from the equipment archives. The device looked almost laughably simple compared to the advanced medical technology surrounding them, but it would serve Sarah's purpose perfectly. Dr. Chun, Dr. Zil began hesitantly. Surely you cannot mean to treat a quantum-level infection with basic acoustic therapy? Sarah was calibrating the device, testing different frequencies while monitoring the ambassador's neural crown responses. The virus is designed to counter sophisticated treatments. It expects complex harmonic patterns, quantum-encrypted frequencies, adaptive resonance therapy. It's not prepared for something this simple. She found the frequency she was looking for, a pure tone that resonated with the basic crystalline structure of Telvanni physiology. Not the complex harmonic signatures the virus was designed to counter, but the fundamental frequency that existed at the core of all silicon-based life. This is insane, Krell muttered, but Sarah noticed he didn't try to stop her. The acoustic generator hummed to life, producing a low, steady tone that filled the medical bay. At first, nothing happened. Ambassador Corveth continued his labored breathing, and his crystalline flesh remained the same sickly orange color. But Sarah watched the readings carefully, noting subtle changes in his bioelectric patterns. After 20 minutes, something remarkable began to happen. The orange discoloration started to fade, beginning at the extremities and working inward. The ambassador's breathing became easier, and his neural crown began to emit its natural harmonic frequencies once again. Impossible, Dr. Zil breathed, his tentacles dancing with excitement as he monitored the readings. The viral load is decreasing. The infection is actually reversing. Sarah maintained the acoustic treatment while explaining what was happening. The virus was so focused on countering complex harmonic patterns that it couldn't adapt to a simple, pure frequency. It's like a sophisticated computer virus trying to infect a mechanical calculator. The processing power it was using to adapt became a liability when faced with something too basic for it to understand. Shin rushed to her ambassador's side as Corveth's eyes fluttered open. The crystalline being's natural transparency was returning, and when he spoke, his voice carried the melodious tones characteristic of healthy Telvanni. What happened? He asked weakly. The human healer saved your life, Shin replied, her own voice chiming with gratitude. She used methods we never would have considered. Ambassador Corveth struggled to sit up, his crystal eyes focusing on Sarah with newfound respect. A human saved a Telvanni? This will not be easily believed on my homeworld. Sarah smiled as she powered down the acoustic generator. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. Your people have been trying to fight the virus with sophisticated technology, but it was designed to counter that. Basic acoustic therapy was something it couldn't predict or adapt to. Dr. Zil was already documenting the procedure, his excitement evident in the rapid movement of his tentacles. This will revolutionize treatment for Rigelian blood fever across the galaxy. Millions of silicon-based life forms could be saved. As Ambassador Corveth continued to recover, Sarah found herself surrounded by alien medical staff all eager to understand her methods. She spent the next hour explaining the principles behind her approach, emphasizing the importance of sometimes stepping back from advanced technology to consider simpler solutions. In human medicine, we have a saying, she told them. When you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. Sometimes the most obvious explanation is the correct one. Krell escorted her back to her cell as the shift ended, but his demeanor had changed noticeably. The usual hostility was gone, replaced by something approaching professional respect. The High Admiral has been asking questions about you, he said as they walked through the corridors. Your success rate with impossible cases has not gone unnoticed. Sarah glanced at him curiously. Questions about what? About whether keeping you as a prisoner is the most effective use of your talents, Krell replied. There are whispers in the command structure about offering you a more cooperative arrangement. The implications of that statement followed Sarah back to her cell. As she lay on her hard metal bench that night, staring out at the stars, she wondered if her 3 years of proving humanity's worth through healing rather than warfare might finally be leading somewhere unexpected. The comm system crackled with another incoming emergency, but this time Dr. Zil's voice carried a note of confidence. Dr. Chun, we have a situation that requires your unique perspective. When you're ready, we could use your help. Sarah smiled in the darkness of her cell. One patient at a time, one impossible case at a time, she was changing how an entire empire viewed humanity. And sometimes that was enough. Sarah woke to the sound of alarms blaring throughout the medical station. The harsh red emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across her cell as she sat up, immediately alert. In 3 years of imprisonment, she had never heard the station's emergency systems activated. Something was very wrong. The energy barrier to her cell deactivated, and Krell rushed in without his usual formal protocols. His 4 arms gestured frantically as he spoke, his translator device struggling to keep up with his rapid clicking speech. "Human, we require your immediate assistance," he said, his compound eyes reflecting genuine fear. "The High Admiral herself has been infected with something our medical staff cannot identify. She is dying, and our best physicians are helpless." Sarah was already moving, pulling on her standard gray uniform. "What are the symptoms?" "Rapid cellular degradation, neural pathway collapse, and complete immune system failure," Krell replied as they hurried through corridors filled with panicked alien personnel. The infection appeared suddenly, during a diplomatic meeting with representatives from the Outer Rim territories. Within hours, it had spread to her entire physiological matrix. They reached the medical bay to find organized chaos. Every physician on the station seemed to be working frantically around a bio bed in the center of the room, while High Admiral THYSS lay unconscious beneath a shimmering containment field. Sarah had never seen the Supreme Commander of the Zephyrian Third Fleet before, and she was struck by how vulnerable the imposing insectoid leader appeared in her weakened state. Dr. Zill approached them, his tentacles writhing with distress. "Dr. Chun, thank the cosmic winds you are here. We have tried every treatment protocol in our medical databases. Nothing is working. The infection appears to be of unknown origin, unlike anything in our xenobiological records." Sarah studied the readouts surrounding High Admiral THYSS. The data was alarming. Whatever had infected the Zephyrian leader was attacking her systems with surgical precision, targeting specific biological functions in a way that suggested deliberate design rather than natural evolution. "This isn't a disease," Sarah said after reviewing the scans. "This is an assassination attempt using biological warfare." The medical staff exchanged worried glances. Krell stepped forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "That is what we suspected, but could not prove. If the High Admiral dies, it could trigger a war that spans half the galaxy. The Outer Rim territories have been growing restless, and her death would be seen as an act of aggression." Sarah approached the containment field, studying the High Admiral's condition more carefully. The infection was indeed sophisticated, designed to mimic natural biological processes while systematically shutting down vital functions. But there was something familiar about the patterns she was seeing in the data. "I need to examine tissue samples," she said. "Not with your quantum analyzers, but with basic chemical tests. Old-fashioned laboratory work." Medical technician Vox looked confused. "Chemical tests? But our molecular scanners can provide far more detailed information about cellular composition and viral structure." "Your molecular scanners are looking for complex biological agents," Sarah explained, already moving toward the laboratory section. "But what if this isn't complex? What if it's designed to look sophisticated while using simple components?" She began running basic chemical analyses on the tissue samples, using techniques that would have been familiar to researchers centuries earlier. While the advanced alien equipment hummed around her, Sarah relied on fundamental chemistry to understand what was attacking the High Admiral. The results were revealing. The so-called infection consisted of synthetic proteins designed to mimic biological threats while remaining undetectable to advanced scanning systems. But the proteins themselves were remarkably simple, constructed from common amino acid sequences that would be found in any basic laboratory. "It's brilliant in its simplicity," Sarah muttered, studying the chemical breakdown. Whoever designed this knew that Zephyrian medicine relies heavily on quantum-level analysis and molecular scanning. They created a weapon that hides in plain sight by being too simple for your instruments to recognize as artificial. Dr. Zill joined her at the laboratory workstation. "Are you suggesting that our advanced medical technology is actually preventing us from identifying the threat?" Sarah nodded. Your scanners are designed to detect complex viral structures, quantum-level pathogens, and sophisticated biological weapons. This infection uses basic proteins that your systems categorize as harmless cellular debris. It's like hiding a bomb in a pile of scrap metal. She continued her analysis, breaking down the synthetic proteins into their component parts. The design was clever, using the body's own cellular machinery to produce toxins while appearing to be normal metabolic processes. But there was a weakness in the design, something the creators hadn't anticipated. The synthetic proteins need specific environmental conditions to remain stable, Sarah said, excitement growing in her voice. They're designed to work in controlled laboratory conditions, not in the chaotic environment of a living organism. If we can disrupt those conditions, she turned to the medical team. I need large quantities of vitamin C, salt water, and basic alcohol. Nothing synthetic or refined, just simple compounds that you'd find in any primitive medical kit. Krell looked skeptical. You propose to treat an advanced biological weapon with nutrients and cleaning solutions? The proteins maintaining this infection are artificially stable, Sarah explained as she began preparing her treatment. They require precise pH levels and ionic concentrations to function properly. Basic chemistry can disrupt that stability in ways that complex medical technology can't address. Working quickly, Sarah prepared an intravenous solution containing high concentrations of vitamin C, electrolytes, and ethyl alcohol. The combination would create cellular conditions that the synthetic proteins couldn't adapt to, essentially causing them to break down at a molecular level. This seems dangerously primitive, Dr. Zill observed as Sarah prepared to administer the treatment. Sometimes primitive is exactly what you need, Sarah replied. The people who designed this weapon expected you to fight it with quantum medicine and nanotechnology. They didn't prepare for someone to attack it with basic biochemistry. The treatment took effect within minutes. High Admiral THYSS's vital signs began to stabilize as the synthetic proteins started breaking down. The mysterious infection that had baffled the Empire's best physicians was neutralized by a combination of compounds that could be found in any basic chemistry lab. As the High Admiral's condition improved, she regained consciousness, her large compound eyes focusing on Sarah with a mixture of confusion and gratitude. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to commanding fleets across the galaxy. "Who is this being that has saved my life?" she asked, her translator device rendering her words in perfect standard galactic. "This is Dr. Sarah Chun," Dr. Zill replied. "She is a prisoner of war from the human territories, but she has proven invaluable in treating complex medical cases." High Admiral THYSS studied Sarah intently. "A human? Interesting. I had not expected to owe my life to a member of a species we consider primitive." Sarah met the alien leader's gaze without flinching. Primitive doesn't mean ineffective. Sometimes old methods work better than new ones, especially when facing enemies who expect you to rely on advanced technology. The High Admiral attempted to sit up, her strength returning rapidly as the synthetic proteins were flushed from her system. "You speak of enemies. Do you believe this was an assassination attempt?" "Without question," Sarah replied. "This was a designed biological weapon, created specifically to exploit weaknesses in Zephyrian medical technology. Someone with detailed knowledge of your medical protocols created something that would be invisible to your scanning systems while being lethal to your physiology." High Admiral THYSS's expression hardened. "The Outer Rim territories. They have been seeking ways to challenge our authority without direct military confrontation. A biological assassination would give them plausible deniability." Krell stepped forward nervously. "High Admiral, what are your orders regarding the prisoner?" The alien leader looked at Sarah with newfound respect. "Dr. Chun has saved my life and possibly prevented a galactic war. Such service cannot be ignored." She paused, considering her words carefully. "I believe it is time to reconsider her status aboard this station." Sarah felt her heart rate increase. 3 years of imprisonment had conditioned her not to hope for too much. But something in the High Admiral's tone suggested significant change was coming. In the meantime, High Admiral THYSS continued, "I want Dr. Chin's medical protocols studied and distributed throughout the fleet. If our enemies are using primitive biological weapons to exploit our technological dependence, We need physicians who understand both advanced and basic medical techniques. Dr. Zill's tentacles writhed with excitement. Hi, Admiral. Dr. Chun has expressed interest in training our medical staff in these older methodologies. Perhaps we could arrange for more collaborative arrangements. The High Admiral nodded slowly. Indeed, a physician of her capabilities should not be wasted in a detention cell. She turned to Sarah directly. Dr. Chun, would you be willing to work with our medical teams in a more official capacity? Sarah chose her words carefully. I became a doctor to save lives, regardless of what species they belong to. If I can continue that work and help prevent unnecessary deaths, then, yes, I'm willing to collaborate. As the medical team continued monitoring the High Admiral's recovery, Sarah realized that her approach to treating supposedly impossible cases had fundamentally changed her relationship with her captors. She was no longer just a human prisoner who happened to be useful. She was becoming something unprecedented in the Zephyrian Empire, a trusted human advisor whose primitive methods had proven more effective than their advanced technology. The implications of this shift would reach far beyond the medical station. But, for now, Sarah was content knowing that she had once again proven that humanity's greatest strength lay not in advanced weapons or technology, but in the simple determination to heal and help others, no matter the circumstances. 6 months had passed since Sarah saved High Admiral HFY from assassination, and her life had changed dramatically. No longer confined to a cell, she now occupied a proper quarters aboard the medical station, complete with a real bed, personal workspace, and even a small viewport overlooking the swirling nebula that surrounded Kepler 442b. More importantly, she had been given the title of Chief Medical Consultant, a position that existed nowhere else in the Zephyrian Empire. The transformation hadn't been easy. Many in the Empire's hierarchy still viewed her with suspicion, unable to accept that a human could possess medical knowledge superior to their own. But results spoke louder than prejudice, and Sarah's success rate with previously incurable conditions had created a demand for her services that reached across multiple star systems. This morning brought a challenge unlike any she had faced before. A delegation from the Ethereal Collective, one of the Empire's most mysterious allied species, had arrived requesting her assistance with what they called the Withering. Sarah had heard whispers about this condition, a degenerative disease that affected energy-based life forms, and had never been successfully treated by conventional medicine. The delegation leader, Entity Prime Nexus, manifested in the medical bay as a shimmering cloud of silvery light roughly humanoid in shape. When they spoke, their voice resonated directly in the minds of everyone present, bypassing the need for translator devices. Dr. Chun. The entity's voice rang with harmonics that seemed to come from everywhere at once. We come to you as a final hope. The Withering has claimed 17% of our population in the past galactic year, and our own healers have found no way to halt its progression. Sarah studied the data crystals the collective had provided, each one containing medical information about their unique physiology. Energy-based beings were perhaps the most alien life forms she had ever encountered, existing as coherent patterns of quantum energy rather than physical matter. Their medical problems required thinking in completely different terms than anything she had previously experienced. Dr. Zill assisted her in accessing the data, his tentacles working quickly over the interface controls. The Withering appears to cause degradation in the quantum coherence that maintains their consciousness and physical form, he explained. Affected entities gradually lose cohesion until they simply dissolve. Sarah reviewed case studies of affected entities, noting patterns in how the disease progressed. The Withering seemed to attack the fundamental energy patterns that gave the ethereals their form and consciousness, slowly unraveling the complex quantum structures that kept them stable. Have you attempted quantum stabilization therapy? Sarah asked Entity Prime Nexus. All conventional treatments have been employed, the entity replied, their form flickering slightly with what might have been distress. Quantum field generators, consciousness anchoring protocols, and energy matrix reinforcement have all proven ineffective. The Withering appears to resist all technological intervention. Sarah frowned, studying the data more carefully. The pattern was becoming familiar. Like the previous cases she had solved, This seemed to be another situation where advanced technology was insufficient to address the problem. But treating energy-based beings required understanding principles of physics that went far beyond traditional medicine. "I need to examine an affected entity directly," Sarah said. "Can that be arranged safely?" Entity prime nexuses' form brightened with what seemed like hope. "We have brought subject Gamma 7, a volunteer in the early stages of the withering. They are contained within specialized holding chambers aboard our vessel." The trip to the ethereal ship was Sarah's first time leaving the medical station since her capture 3 years earlier. The collective's vessel was unlike anything in the Zephyrian fleet, appearing more like a crystalline growth than a constructed spaceship. Its surfaces pulsed with internal light, and the corridors seemed to shift and change as they moved through them. Subject Gamma 7 appeared as a pale, wavering version of Entity Prime Nexus, their quantum coherence visibly unstable. Areas of their form flickered in and out of existence, and when they spoke, their mental voice was weak and fragmented. "I volunteer for examination," they managed, their consciousness clearly struggling to maintain cohesion. "If it may help my people." Sarah approached carefully, using specialized sensors to examine Gamma 7's energy patterns. What she found was both fascinating and deeply disturbing. The withering wasn't just attacking the entity's quantum coherence. It was specifically targeting the harmonic frequencies that maintained their consciousness structure. "It's not random degradation," Sarah said, studying the readouts. "Something is systematically disrupting the frequency patterns that keep your people stable. This looks almost like..." She stopped, realization hitting her like a physical blow. The patterns she was seeing were remarkably similar to what she had observed in the High Admiral's assassination attempt, but adapted for energy-based physiology instead of biological systems. "This is another weapon," Sarah said grimly. "Someone has developed a means of attacking energy-based life forms by disrupting their fundamental quantum coherence. The withering isn't a disease, it's a targeted assault." Entity Prime Nexus's form flared with alarm. "You believe this is artificial?" "But it appeared spontaneously across our population, with no apparent vector of transmission." Sarah was already thinking through the implications. That's what makes it so insidious. Instead of a biological pathogen, someone has found a way to broadcast disruptive frequencies that interfere with your natural energy patterns. Your people wouldn't even realize they were under attack until the damage was already done. Dr. Zill, who had accompanied them to the ethereal vessel, joined the discussion. But how would such an attack be delivered? The collective exists across multiple dimensions, with their population distributed throughout subspace. Sarah continued studying the frequency patterns affecting Gamma 7, looking for clues about the source of the disruption. The attack would need to use something that permeates subspace uniformly, something your people wouldn't think to shield against because it seems harmless. She found her answer in the quantum background radiation that filled the space around the collective's home systems. Hidden within the natural cosmic background noise were artificial frequencies, so subtle that they would be dismissed as normal variation by most scanning systems. "There," Sarah pointed to the data display. "Someone has been modulating the quantum background radiation in your home systems, introducing disruptive frequencies that interfere with your natural coherence patterns. It's like poisoning the air you breathe, except in this case, they're poisoning the quantum substrate your people exist within." Entity Prime Nexus's form darkened with anger. Who would possess such technology? And why would they target the collective? Sarah thought about the political implications. The ethereal collective was one of the Zephyrian Empire's most powerful allies, providing advanced quantum technologies that gave the Empire significant strategic advantages. Eliminating them would weaken the Empire considerably while appearing to be a natural disaster rather than an act of war. "The same people who tried to assassinate High Admiral THYSS, Sarah replied. "They're using increasingly sophisticated weapons designed to exploit specific weaknesses in Empire species while remaining undetectable to conventional scanning." The treatment for the withering proved to be simpler than expected once Sarah understood its true nature. Instead of trying to fight the disruptive frequencies with advanced quantum technology, she proposed using basic harmonic interference to cancel out the artificial signals. "We need to create counter-frequencies that neutralize the disruptive patterns," she explained to the assembled ethereal healers. "But Instead of using complex quantum generators, we'll use simple acoustic resonance chambers that can produce pure harmonic frequencies. The ethereals were skeptical. Their entire existence was based on sophisticated manipulation of quantum energy, and the idea of using primitive acoustic devices seemed almost insulting to their advanced nature. Dr. Chun, Entity Prime Nexus said carefully, "Surely our quantum resonance systems would be more effective than basic sound generation?" "Your quantum systems are exactly what the weapon is designed to counter," Sarah replied. "The disruptive frequencies adapt to technological interference, but they can't adapt to simple acoustic waves that don't use quantum mechanics at all." The treatment worked. Within hours of establishing acoustic resonance chambers throughout the collective's home systems, affected entities began showing improvement. Subject Gamma 7 was among the first to recover, their quantum coherence stabilizing as the disruptive frequencies were canceled out by Sarah's primitive but effective countermeasures. "Remarkable," Entity Prime Nexus observed as they watched their people recover. "Once again, you have solved an impossible problem by abandoning advanced solutions in favor of basic principles." Sarah smiled as she watched Gamma 7's form solidify back into healthy coherence. Sometimes the best way to fight sophisticated enemies is with techniques they don't understand. Whoever is behind these attacks expects their targets to rely on advanced technology. They're not prepared for solutions that use fundamental physics instead of quantum engineering. The implications of this latest attack were troubling. Someone was systematically targeting key species within the Zephyrian Empire using weapons specifically designed to exploit their reliance on advanced technology. The assassination attempt on High Admiral THYSS and the attack on the Ethereal Collective suggested a coordinated campaign to destabilize the Empire from within. As Sarah prepared to return to the medical station, Entity Prime Nexus approached her with an offer that would change everything. "Dr. Chun," the entity said, their form shimmering with gratitude, "the collective wishes to formally request your assistance in establishing new medical protocols for the Empire. We believe your unique perspective could help protect all allied species from future attacks." Sarah realized that her role was evolving once again. No longer just a healer treating individual patients, she was becoming something unprecedented in galactic politics, a human strategist whose primitive methods were proving essential to the Empire's survival. The war for the galaxy's future would be fought not with advanced weapons or sophisticated technology, but with the simple human ability to see solutions that others missed. And Sarah Chun, former prisoner and trauma surgeon from Earth, was about to become one of the most important people in the Empire. 2 years after her appointment as chief medical consultant, Sarah stood in the war room of the Zephyrian Imperial Command, surrounded by the Empire's highest-ranking officials. The circular chamber aboard the massive dreadnought Cosmic Dominion hummed with activity as holographic displays showed tactical information from across the galaxy. She was no longer just a healer. She had become something that had never existed before in galactic politics, a human strategic advisor whose insights were reshaping how the Empire approached both medicine and warfare. The latest crisis had brought representatives from all major allied species to this emergency council. Fleet Admiral Korvax, High Admiral THYSS's superior, gestured toward the central display where red warning indicators flashed across multiple star systems. "The situation is deteriorating rapidly," the massive Zephyrian commander announced, his 4 arms manipulating data streams with practiced efficiency. 7 allied species have reported simultaneous outbreaks of species-specific diseases, all appearing within the same 48-hour period. "Our medical facilities are overwhelmed, and conventional treatment protocols have proven completely ineffective." Sarah studied the tactical display with growing concern. The molten core plague affecting the Pyrotheans, neural cascade syndrome striking the cerebrals, ionic disruption disease targeting the electromorphs, and for other conditions had appeared almost simultaneously across the Empire. The coordination was too precise to be coincidental. Ambassador Veltar of the Pyrotheans spoke next, his volcanic rock-like form radiating heat that distorted the air around him. "Our home systems are losing thousands per day to the core plague. Our people are literally burning from the inside out as our internal thermal regulation fails. We have attempted emergency cooling protocols, but the disease adapts faster than we can modify our treatments. Entity Prime Nexus, representing the ethereal collective, added their concerns. The patterns are familiar. These are not natural diseases, but sophisticated biological weapons designed specifically for each targeted species. Someone possesses detailed knowledge of our physiologies and has weaponized our unique biological processes. Sarah had been dreading this moment. Over the past months, she had identified and neutralized 3 separate biological weapons targeting key Empire species, but she had known these were just probing attacks. Now, the real assault had begun, a coordinated strike designed to cripple the Empire's most important allies simultaneously. This is a multi-vector biological warfare campaign, Sarah announced to the assembled leaders. Someone has been studying your species for years, identifying biological vulnerabilities, and creating targeted weapons that exploit your reliance on advanced medical technology. Fleet Admiral Korvax's compound eyes focused on her intently. Dr. Chun, based on your previous successes, what do you recommend? Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would determine the fate of billions of beings across the galaxy. We need to abandon our conventional medical approaches entirely. Every one of these diseases is designed to counter advanced technological treatments. We need to fight sophisticated biological weapons with primitive medical techniques. The room erupted in concerned chittering, clicking, and harmonic vibrations as the various alien representatives reacted to her proposal. Dr. Zill, now serving as chief medical officer for the entire fleet, spoke for the assembled physicians. Dr. Chun, surely you cannot suggest that we abandon centuries of medical advancement to treat the most sophisticated biological weapons ever created? That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Sarah replied firmly. These weapons succeed because they expect you to fight them with quantum medicine, nanotechnology, and complex pharmaceutical compounds. But they can adapt to treatments they don't understand, medical techniques so simple they don't register as threats. She moved to the central display and began calling up her analyses of each disease. Every one of these conditions targets specific biological processes while remaining invisible to advanced scanning systems. But they all share the same weakness. They require stable cellular environments to maintain their effectiveness. Sarah highlighted patterns in the data that the alien physicians had missed. The molten core plague disrupts Pyrothean thermal regulation by attacking heat dispersal proteins, but it requires precise ionic concentrations to remain active. Simple salt solutions would destabilize it completely. She continued through each disease, explaining how primitive treatments could neutralize sophisticated biological weapons. Neural cascade syndrome could be stopped with basic B vitamin therapy. Ionic disruption disease would collapse when exposed to simple electromagnetic fields generated by copper coils. Dr. Chun, Ambassador Veltar rumbled, his rocky form shifting with uncertainty. You propose to save our civilizations with salt water and vitamins? I propose to save your civilizations with techniques that work, Sarah replied. Advanced medicine has made you vulnerable to these attacks because it's predictable. Primitive medicine is unpredictable, which makes it an effective weapon against biological weapons designed to counter technological responses. Fleet Admiral Korvax considered her proposals carefully. The risk is enormous. If your methods fail, we could lose entire populations before conventional treatments can be implemented. Sarah met his gaze steadily. Admiral, conventional treatments have already failed. These diseases were specifically designed to counter your medical technology. You can continue fighting a war you're guaranteed to lose, or you can try something the enemy didn't prepare for. The debate that followed was intense, but brief. With billions of lives hanging in the balance and conventional medicine proving useless, the Empire's leaders had little choice but to trust the human doctor who had consistently achieved impossible medical successes. Sarah found herself coordinating the largest medical operation in galactic history. Using emergency communication networks, she transmitted treatment protocols to medical facilities across 7-star systems simultaneously. The instructions seemed almost insultingly simple. Basic salt solutions, primitive vitamins, crude electromagnetic devices, and other techniques that would have been familiar to Earth doctors centuries earlier. The next 24 hours were the longest of Sarah's life. She remained in the command center, monitoring reports from across the galaxy as primitive human medical techniques were deployed against sophisticated alien biological weapons. The initial results were mixed, with some facilities reporting dramatic improvements while others showed no change. Dr. Chun, Entity Prime Nexus reported, their form flickering with concern. The Cerebral Medical Collective reports that B vitamin therapy is showing promise against neural cascade syndrome. But the response is inconsistent. Sarah studied the incoming data streams, noting patterns in the treatment responses. The inconsistency is because your medical staff are overthinking the treatments. They're trying to optimize and refine techniques that work specifically because they're simple. She opened communication channels to medical facilities across the affected systems. All medical personnel, this is Dr. Chun. Stop trying to improve the treatment protocols. These techniques work because they're basic, not despite it. Use exactly the dosages and procedures I specified, without modifications. The breakthrough came 18 hours into the crisis. Reports began flooding in from across the empire as the primitive treatments achieved what advanced medicine could not. The Pyrothean's core plague collapsed when exposed to simple electrolyte solutions. Neural cascade syndrome reversed completely with basic vitamin therapy. One by one, the sophisticated biological weapons were neutralized by techniques so primitive they couldn't adapt to them. Impossible, Dr. Zill breathed as he monitored the galaxy-wide treatment results. 7 separate biological weapons, each designed to counter our most advanced medical technology, defeated by treatments that wouldn't be out of place in a primitive field hospital. Sarah allowed herself a moment of relief as the last disease reports shifted from critical to stable. Sometimes the most sophisticated attacks are vulnerable to the simplest defenses. Whoever created these weapons spent years studying your medical technology, but they never considered that someone might abandon that technology entirely. Fleet Admiral Korvax approached her with an expression of profound gratitude. Dr. Chun, your techniques have saved not just billions of lives, but the stability of the entire empire. These coordinated attacks were clearly designed to collapse our alliance by eliminating key member species. Sarah nodded, but her expression remained serious. This was just the opening move. Whoever is behind these attacks now knows their biological weapons can be countered. They'll adapt their strategy. Then, we must adapt as well. High Admiral THYSS interjected, joining the conversation. Dr. Chun, I am authorizing the establishment of the Imperial Medical Corps with you as its director. We need physicians throughout the Empire trained in both advanced and primitive medical techniques. The implications of that authorization were staggering. Sarah would become the first human to hold a command position in the Zephyrian Empire, responsible for training thousands of alien physicians in human medical techniques that had proven superior to their advanced technology. Entity Prime Nexus approached, their form shimmering with respect. Dr. Chun, the collective wishes to formally nominate you for admission to the Galactic Medical Council. Your contributions to interspecies medicine have been unprecedented. Sarah looked around the command center at the assembled alien leaders, all of whom were watching her with expressions ranging from gratitude to amazement. 3 years ago, she had been a prisoner of war, captured during a raid on a human medical colony. Now she stood as one of the most influential beings in the galaxy, having proven that humanity's greatest strength lay not in advanced technology, but in the simple determination to heal and help others. I accept the position, Sarah said formally. But I want to make one thing clear. This isn't about human superiority over alien technology. It's about combining the best of both approaches. Primitive techniques work because they're unexpected and adaptive, but they work even better when backed by the understanding that advanced science provides. As the emergency session concluded and the various alien representatives prepared to return to their home systems, Sarah realized that her role had evolved far beyond anything she could have imagined. She was no longer just a healer or even a strategic advisor. She had become a bridge between species, proof that cooperation and understanding could achieve what technology alone could not. The war for the galaxy's future would continue, but now the Empire had something it had never possessed before, a medical corps trained to fight sophisticated attacks with simple solutions, led by a human doctor who had shown that sometimes the best way to save lives was to remember that healing was about more than just advanced technology. Looking out at the stars beyond the command center's viewports, Sarah smiled. She had found her place in the galaxy, not as a prisoner or even as a curiosity, but as exactly what she had always been, a doctor who would never stop trying to save lives, no matter whose they belonged to or what it took to heal them. In the end, that was the most human thing of all.